The North remembers. But do you remember just how twisted its villains truly were? From Beyond the Wall to the Dreadfort, the North has produced some of the most sadistic, power-hungry, and downright evil characters in all of Westeros. In this video, I'm ranking the 10 most evil villains of the North based on their actions, motivations, and the sheer horror they inflicted on others. These aren't just bad guys, they're monsters who would make even Tywin Lannister uncomfortable. But before we dive in, let me clarify something. This isn't just about who killed the most people, it's about the calculated cruelty, the psychological torture, and the complete lack of humanity these characters displayed. Some of these villains might surprise you, while others, well, their place on this list was never in question. So let's count down the 10 most depraved villains of the North, starting with Number 10. Craster living beyond the wall. Craster wasn't a major player in the Game of Thrones, but his depravity earns him a spot on this list. This wildling kept to himself in his small keep, but what happened inside those walls was truly disturbing. Craster married his own daughters, then he married their daughters, and their daughters after that. He had 19 wives at once, most of them his own offspring. If that wasn't bad enough, whenever one of his wives gave birth to a son, he would leave the infant in the woods as a sacrifice to the White Walkers. What makes Craster particularly disturbing is how mundane he made his monstrosity seem. He wasn't a grand villain with world-dominating ambitions. He was just a man who created his own little kingdom of horror and ruled it with absolute authority until his death at the hands of his own guests. Number 9. Mance Rayder. Some might be surprised to see the King Beyond the Wall on this list. After all, wasn't he just fighting for the freedom of his people? That's the story he told, but look closer at his actions. Mance united 90 different wildling tribes, including Thens who practiced cannibalism and giants who crushed men underfoot, and led them in an invasion that resulted in the deaths of countless innocent villagers. The Night's Watch lost nearly 50 men at the Battle of Castle Black because of his ambition. What makes Mance particularly insidious is how he cloaked his violence in nobility. He presented himself as a freedom fighter while ordering raids on defenseless villages. He claimed to be protecting his people from the White Walkers, yet his invasion plan would have left thousands of wildlings dead at the wall even if they'd succeeded. Mance may not have been sadistic like others on this list, but his willingness to sacrifice thousands of innocent lives for his vision of freedom earns him a spot among the North's great villains. Number 8. The Umbers. The betrayal of House Umbers stands as one of the North's greatest acts of treachery. For generations, the Umbers were among the Starks' most loyal bannermen. Then, under Smalljan Umber, they betrayed Rickon Stark and handed him over to Ramsay Bolton. What makes this betrayal particularly depraved is how they delivered Rickon, alongside the severed head of his direwolf, Shaggydog, as proof of identity. They didn't just switch sides in a war, they murdered a sacred symbol of House Stark and delivered a child to a known sadist. The Umbers knew exactly what kind of monster Ramsay Bolton was. They knew what would happen to Rickon, and they did it anyway, not for any great principle, but simply to back who they thought would be the winning side. Number 7. Cregan Stark. Going back in time to the Dance of the Dragons, we find one of the most ruthless Starks in history. Cregan Stark, the Lord of Winterfell during this period, arrived in King's Landing after the main fighting had ended, but his impact was no less terrifying. During what became known as the Hour of the Wolf, Cregan seized control of King's Landing and conducted a series of brutal trials and executions. Anyone who had played a role in poisoning King Aegon II was condemned to death, regardless of their reasons or the fact that their actions had effectively ended the Civil War. What makes Cregan particularly disturbing is how he wrapped his bloodthirst in the cloak of justice. Unlike other Starks who are remembered for their honor, Cregan is remembered for his mercilessness. He wasn't interested in peace or reconciliation. He wanted vengeance, and he used northern justice as his excuse. Number 6. The Boltons, before Rose and Ramsay. Long before Rose and Ramsay Bolton terrorized the North, House Bolton had established itself as the most feared family in the region. For thousands of years, the Boltons flayed their enemies alive, a practice so horrific they incorporated a flayed man into their house sigil. The ancient Boltons weren't just cruel in battle, they made an art form of suffering. They wore the skins of Stark kings as cloaks. They kept dungeons filled with their enemies' remains. Some even whispered that Bolton lords took the right of the first night, with new brides in their lands, fathering children they would later flay if they proved disloyal. What makes the ancient Boltons particularly disturbing is how institutionalized their cruelty became. This wasn't just one mad lord or a temporary reign of terror, it was generations of systematic torture elevated to a family tradition. Number 5. Larys Strong. Jumping to House of the Dragon, Larys Clubfoot Strong might seem like a minor player at first, but his particular brand of villainy is uniquely disturbing. Unlike others who commit atrocities in the heat of battle or rage, Larys calculates each move with cold precision. His first major act of villainy was arranging the murder of his own father and brother by setting fire to Harrenhal, simply to advance his position with Queen Alicent. He did this without hesitation or remorse, watching from King's Landing as his family burned. What makes Larys particularly depraved is his complete lack of normal human attachment. He has no loyalty to family, no real political convictions, and no apparent desire for power itself. He simply enjoys manipulating events from the shadows, creating chaos and watching others suffer the consequences. His relationship with Queen Alicent adds another layer of depravity, as he provides her with information in exchange for the opportunity to indulge his foot fetish, reducing even sexuality to a cold transaction. In a world of dragons and armies, Larys proves that sometimes the most dangerous weapon is a calculating mind unburdened by conscience. Number 4. Rose Bolton. A peaceful land, a quiet people. This was Rose Bolton's motto, but the peace he created was built on a foundation of calculated terror. Unlike his son Ramsay, who reveled in chaos, Rose was methodical in his cruelty. Rose's villainy wasn't just in his betrayal of Robb Stark at the Red Wedding, though that alone would earn him a high spot on this list. It was in how he ruled the Dreadfort for decades before that. He conducted secret flayings despite the practice being outlawed. He raped a miller's wife under her husband's hanging body, and later acknowledged the son born from this rape, Ramsay. What makes Rose particularly disturbing is his complete emotional detachment. He didn't seem to enjoy cruelty like Ramsay did. He simply saw it as an effective tool. He spoke softly, forcing others to listen carefully, and used fear rather than shouting to maintain control. Rose understood something many villains don't, that true power comes not from random acts of violence, but from creating a system where violence is always possible, but rarely necessary. Number 3. Bloodraven. Before he became the Three-Eyed Raven, Brynden Rivers, known as Bloodraven, was Hand of the King and Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. With his distinctive birthmark and missing eye, he was feared throughout Westeros as a sorcerer and spymaster. During the Blackfire Rebellions, Bloodraven showed no mercy to his enemies, even when they were his own half-brothers. He ordered the deaths of hundreds, using his network of spies, his 1,000 eyes and one, to find anyone who opposed Targaryen rule. What makes Bloodraven particularly disturbing is how he combined political power with magical abilities. As a Greenseer, he could see through weirwood trees and potentially influence events. This means many of his predictions may have been self-fulfilling prophecies. He saw what would happen because he made it happen. Even after being sent to the Wall for killing a Blackfire under a flag of truce, Bloodraven continued manipulating events. He eventually abandoned his post to become the Three-Eyed Raven, using his powers to pull strings across Westeros for over a century. Number 2. Daemon Targaryen. The Rogue Prince earns his high ranking through a combination of calculated cruelty and impulsive violence that makes him uniquely unpredictable and dangerous. Throughout House of the Dragon, Daemon shows himself to be a man capable of both strategic brilliance and shocking brutality. His list of atrocities is long. He ordered the beheading of criminals without trial as commander of the City Watch. He celebrated the death of his nephew, calling him the heir for a day. He took his niece Rhaenyra to a pleasure house when she was still a teenager. He murdered his wife Rhea Royce by crushing her skull, and he ordered the assassination of a child, resulting in the horrific death of an innocent boy. What makes Daemon particularly disturbing is his charm. Unlike other villains who hide in shadows, Daemon flaunts his darkness openly and still manages to win loyalty and even love. He's a seductive kind of monster, one who makes depravity look exciting rather than repulsive. His relationship with Rhaenyra adds another layer of complexity to his villainy. Is he manipulating her for power, or does he genuinely care for her? The ambiguity makes him all the more frightening, a villain who might occasionally show mercy, but only when it suits his own desires. Number 1. Ramsay Bolton. Was there ever any doubt who would top this list? Ramsay Bolton stands as the most depraved villain the North has ever produced, a man who turned torture into an art form and cruelty into a lifestyle. Ramsay's atrocities are almost too numerous to list. He hunted women with dogs for sport, he flayed men alive to extract information, or simply for pleasure. He psychologically broke Theon Greyjoy so completely that he created a new identity, Reek. He raped Sansa Stark on her wedding night and forced Theon to watch. He murdered his father, stepmother, and infant half-brother to secure his position. What makes Ramsay particularly disturbing isn't just what he did, but how much he enjoyed it. Unlike Roose, who used cruelty as a tool, or the Night King, who killed without emotion, Ramsay took genuine pleasure in suffering. The smile on his face as he tortured his victims revealed a man who wasn't just evil, he was having fun being evil. Even his death, being eaten alive by the same hounds he had starved and trained to kill, felt like poetic justice for a man who had inflicted so much suffering on others. As Sansa walked away from his screams, viewers around the world felt not horror but satisfaction that the North's greatest monster had finally faced Northern justice. Honorable mentions. Before we wrap up, let's quickly acknowledge some villains who didn't quite make our top 10. The Night King. While technically the greatest threat to the North, his lack of personal cruelty and emotional detachment make him more force of nature than villain. Euron Greyjoy. Though his raids terrorized the northern coastline, he's more an Iron Islands villain than truly of the North. Locke, Bolton's man who cut off Jaime's hand, showed particular cruelty, but lacked the power and influence of our top contenders. The Rat Cook. This legendary Night's Watch member who fed a king his own son would rank higher if we had more historical details. The Night's King, the legendary 13th Lord Commander who sacrificed to the White Walkers, would rank higher if his story wasn't shrouded in myth. So there you have it, the 10 most depraved villains the North has ever produced, ranked by their sheer capacity for evil. From legendary monsters to the all-too-human cruelty of Ramsay Bolton, these characters remind us that even in the honorable North, darkness finds a way to thrive. But what do you think? Did I rank these villains correctly? Is there someone I missed who deserved a spot on this list? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Explainified for more deep dives into your favorite shows. And check out our video on the most depraved villains of the South to see how they compare to their northern counterparts. Thanks for watching, and remember, the North remembers. And after this video, so will you.